Penguin Random House Audio presents Pure Innocent Fun, Essays. This is the author, Ira Madison III. For Bobby. Whether we're talking about race or gender or class, popular culture is where the pedagogy is. It's where the learning is. Bell Hooks, Cultural Criticism and Transformation, 1997. It's unfortunate that people can change something that was just pure innocent fun into drama. Nene Leakes, The Real Housewives of Atlanta, 2008. Introduction. On Chuck Klosterman. My life has been a never-ending battle in defense of 5 British white men. Those men are Johnny Buckland, Guy Berryman, Will Champion, Phil Harvey, and one household name, Chris Martin. Yes, ex-Mr. Gwyneth Paltrow himself. So why do I defend Chris Martin and his bandmates like I'm the Power Rangers defending the Earth from Rita Repulsa? Because I really fucking love Coldplay. I didn't have to imagine my mom or younger sister admonishing me with a, "Boy, turn off that white music," if I dared to play Coldplay in the car. Coldplay was white music, but it was also uncool white music to my classmates at my predominantly white all-boys school, Milwaukee's Marquette University High School. That was my first realization that self-hate exists in every community. The phrase, "it be your own people," could apply to white people too. To start, I used to think Coldplay sucked because one of my idols, Chuck Klosterman, hated them. No, he didn't just hate Coldplay. He referred to them as absolutely the shittiest fucking band he'd ever heard in his entire fucking life, in his 2003 essay collection, Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. Described as a low-culture manifesto, the book features a collection of essays about music, film, and television, and Klosterman's analysis of his Generation X cohorts. I discovered the book via the early 2000s teen soap The OC during an episode where Adam Brody's character, Seth Cohen, is seen reading Klosterman's book in his bedroom. At the time, I was a film-obsessed comic book nerd who read books instead of making friends at school, so Seth was one of my favorite TV characters. As an adult, I realized Seth is the show's villain, just like Xander Harris on Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Seth's taste in pop culture led me to an obsession with Death Cab for Cutie, The Strokes, and in turn, Klosterman's writing. I bought the book based on the title and its connection to the OC. It was through reading it that I experienced my first piece of cultural criticism. Aside from obsessive viewings at the Movies, the movie review show hosted by Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel, and later Richard Roeper, after Siskel's death in 1999. While I did have my own completely embarrassing to read as an adult newspaper column in high school, partly inspired by At the Movies, it was mostly movie reviews and gripes with high school theater productions that I wasn't cast in. These are the confessions of being a teenage hater. I experienced some TV criticism on my favorite websites, BuffyGuide.com and Television Without Pity. Still, it wasn't until reading Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs that I realized you could write essays that weren't just movie reviews or recaps of TV shows. Not only had someone written a book about Britney Spears, Saved by the Bell, and Tom Cruise, but he had also written it as seriously as any term paper I'd ever been assigned. While working at Borders and later Barnes & Noble, I began reading the book cover to cover every few weeks. In college in Chicago, I began reading GQ, Esquire, and other magazines Klosterman had written for. As an adult, I discovered that Klosterman didn't invent pop culture criticism, but teenage me in the middle of Milwaukee didn't know that, and therefore I took everything that he wrote as a sacrament. If Cosmo was Elle Woods' Bible in Legally Blonde, my Bible was Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. And if there was one thing I knew about Klosterman, it was that he hates Coldplay. My classmates at Marquette felt the same way. If you've seen any film set in high school or survived the real thing yourself, then you know that teenagers are mushy brains waiting to be shaped by behaviors they observe and opinions they adopt. No pop culture take is formed in a vacuum, especially when you're in high school. It's why someone corny once coined the phrase, "If your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump too?" I mean, probably. Keith Raniere's cult NXIVM has got nothing on high school groupthink. For instance, I learned about the existence of a band named Guster in high school. I do not know what Guster sounds like, and I've maybe listened to one song. But if you ask me who one of my favorite bands in high school was, I might say Guster, because everyone at Marquette loved Guster. It was better to agree with people than be the odd man out. The one time I was almost forced to attend a concert of a band I'd never listened to was during Summerfest, a yearly music festival in Milwaukee. But Guster was playing at the same time as Ben Folds. I was a Ben Folds fan, because how could a high school student resist the psychic pull of lyrics like, "Give me my money back, you bitch"? Ben Folds was one of my first entryways to white, angsty rock music that tapped into my high school anxieties. And thanks to Ben Folds, I never had to see Guster that summer and try to sing along the songs I didn't know the words to. High school involved a lot of lying about my taste in music. One thing about Coldplay in the early 2000s is that their name was shorthand for shitty music. Coldplay made love songs, another thing considered uncool and, quote, faggy, to quote the only adjective more popular among millennial teenage boys than retarded. The only love songs that boys at Marquette knew were songs from the Beatles that they would play on acoustic guitar at parties. Of course, I say songs, plural, as if they ever played any fucking song other than Yesterday, but I digress. If you wanted to impress someone with your music taste, all it took was a quick dig about Chris Martin. Mind you, I loved Chris Martin. But I liked making my classmates laugh more. Coldplay's crime was they weren't just pop music, they were popular music. And a holdover from Gen X's culture of hating everything popular was that pop music was usually discussed with derision. Like the music of Britney Spears, which is often evaluated fondly in retrospective nostalgia. But I remember very well that liking Britney's music pre-Toxic was tantamount to being an Al-Qaeda terrorist. Long before sites like Pitchfork decided that pop music was a genre worthy of consideration, Britney was bubblegum pop. She was kids bop. But the anti-rebound sex anthem Don't Go Knocking on My Door would like a word. People criticized Britney and similar teen pop stars for not writing their own music. They were assumed to be lip-syncing every performance. They made music for preteen girls. And more than being a punchline for the alleged unseriousness of her music, Britney Spears was also a punchline because she was blonde and attractive, and late-night hosts admit they wanted to fuck her, despite being a teenager at the time. But she wasn't a, quote, real artist like Alanis Morissette or Tori Amos. Not that men at the time gave an actual fuck about female rock artists, except when they were useful to slam pop music. For instance, take Liz Phair. Touted as a groundbreaking indie rock artist with her 1993 debut, Exile in Guyville, only to be trashed by Pitchfork with an infamous zero-star review for her 2003 self-titled foray into pop, Liz Phair. In 2019, critic Matt LeMay apologized in a series of tweets for his, quote, condescending and cringe review and stated, "The idea that indie rock and radio pop are both cultural constructs, languages to play with, masks for an artist to try on? Yeah, I certainly did not get that. Liz Phair did get that, way before many of us did." End quote. That's why, for Britney, it wasn't until Toxic debuted that the art kids at school, the arbiters of all music tastes, decided it was a great song, and other Britney songs were in regular rotation on people's playlists. The raucous production of Toxic was more aligned with something like The Prodigy's Smack My Bitch Up or Fatboy Slim's Right Here, Right Now than radio pop. It's extremely common for a millennial who once hated Britney to hit the dance floor excitedly when Baby One More Time comes on. So I continued with the notion that Coldplay was the worst fucking band in the world until I found an ally, another idol of mine, R&B goddess Brandy. In 2004, she released the impeccable album Aphrodisiac, no skips. It's her fourth album, and it was mostly a collaboration with Timbaland, and it experiments with sounds more than her previous traditional R&B albums. This was an album made for people who loved R&B, but also fell in love with the bands that usually played on WB teen soap operas, from Bush to Amy Mann to Portishead. One of my favorite tracks, I Tried, samples The Klansmen by heavy metal group Iron Maiden, a band I'd only heard of in the pages of another of Klosterman's books, Fargo Rock City, which was an ode to an abundance of 80s rock bands I'd never heard of.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?